So before we begin the session, I'd like for all of us to remember our fellow countrymen and women who have lost their lives to COVID-19 despite their valiant battles. People all around us, and maybe some of us present here, have had to face the monumental setbacks in personal and professional lives in the past year. In these challenging times, it is indeed a privilege to be healthy, and I pray to Almighty keep us safe. May God bless us and our loved ones. With this small prayer, we are starting our program. As for the AICTE sponsored Adult FDP, organized by our institute, IICT, we are thrilled to be hosting you, albeit virtually, for the next 5 days. We are hopeful that the present opportunities of significant learning for all of you, along with lessons that you can distill further to your students and community. I would like to quickly acquaint you with some of the housekeeping rules of this FDP. The FDP will be conducted on the Cisco WebEx platform and the link will be saved every day. And please kindly note, login using your same name and the email ID that you used to register in the AICTE Adult Portal meeting. As per AICTE Adult norms, the participants have to score at least 60% marks and minimum 80% attendance for successfully completing the workshop. The MCQ-based exam will be taken on the last day, 4th June, at 4:15 p.m. to 5 p.m. and it is mandatory to attend the exam to receive a certificate. The multiple choice questions will be given by the resource persons. Schedule of the classes and the corresponding resource persons can be found in the brochure. The certificate will be given to only to those participants who qualify the AICTE criteria mentioned in the point 3, and no personal requests or references shall be accepted. Keep your mic on mute and camera off for better reception of the program till you are asked to speak. If you want to ask any questions related to the session, then post in the chat. We request you to not unmute yours unless you are specifically asked to do so. Session coordinators and rapporteurs will receive a special contribution certificate at the end of the FD. All the sessions will be of 2 hours duration, including the discussion and the question and answers. We have introduced a new system of session coordinator and reporter who will be summing up the session.
ये तो बता रहे 12 बजे से शुरू होगा बोल रहे हैं
Hello. Please mute yourself.
सर घूम रहा है नहीं वैसे
Darpanji, please
स्मूथली
mute.
चल रहा है एकदम फर्स्ट क्लास
Darpanji, please mute.
हाँ यस मैडम
Please mute. Your voice is coming. The topic recent developments in sustainability covers basic needs of human life, food, shelter, and clothing. For that purpose, we have a lecture on food processing, building construction, architecture, and our own textiles, and methods which are sustainable in each and every area. We will also cover contemporary topics such as land, water, and air pollution, and sustainable methods to overcome the pollution. We also expect the topic on 9 R's of sustainability and nanomaterials to be of interest. Looking at the heterogeneity of the crowd, we have tried to include speakers from all branches of engineering and science with a little more weightage to our own textiles branch because our institute is mainly focused on carpet and textiles. A compulsory session by AICTE on yoga and mental health and happiness is also on the itinerary, as we sincerely believe that physical and mental health are critical to the holistic growth and to sustain a healthy life. Without further ado, I request our speaker, Dr. Shiva Paditi, maybe already in, and I am requesting coordinator, Dr. Shravan Gupta, and the session coordinator for this particular program to introduce the speaker. Thank you. Shiva, you are already there, Shiva? Dr. Shiva, you are there? Shiva, can you hear me?
Hello. Thank you, madam.
You are audible. You are audible.
नहीं,
Please,
ma'am, welcome to all of you in the first session of this FDP. Today we have Dr. Shiva Pariti, and his topic is sustainable textile process. Dr. Shiva Pariti holds over 12 years of work experience with Dye Star Group and later with Blue Wind STS. He has been an integral part of the STS senior management team and engages with the industry's stakeholders, developing the most practical solutions to complex challenges. Being a passionate teacher, Dr. Shiva is responsible to ensure the excellence of STS services globally and leads the STS Training Academy. He is a member of advisory board for JDSC Academy and is an approved JDHC training provider. He has obtained his BSc Tech, MSc Tech, and PhD Tech from the Institute of Chemical Technology, formerly known as the University Department of Chemical Technology, UDCT, in the field of Intermediates and Dye Stuff Technology Division. He is also an approved chemical specialist verifier and trainer for his FEM 3.0 and had conducted various HIG FEM 3.0 training, and currently he is serving as Honorable Chairman SDC EC. I am inviting Dr. Shiva Pariti to continue session. Dr. Shiva. Sir, you are not audible.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and can you also see my screen?
So your screen is not visible, sir.
Okay, I will again do. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
And can you see my screen?
Yeah, your screen is visual.
Okay, okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the organizers to actually give me the opportunity to share few of the sustainable textile processes which are happening around the world right now. This is not my personal work. This is a compilation of what is happening across the world and how the world is changing in the field of textile. So the agenda for today is broadly divided into three segments. The first is what do we need to do and what are the challenges before us. I'm not going to go deep into because you all are fully aware of what are the challenges, but I want to give you few brief ideas or areas where the research needs to be done or the studies need to be done or the studies which are happening currently and in future. Then we talk about the sustainable fibers, which is basically the raw materials. So what are the sustainability aspects which are covered under raw materials? And then we look into the technologies or processes wherein it could be a chemical or it could be a machine or it could be a process where we are looking at sustainability aspects. It could be in pre-treatment, it could be in dyeing, it could be in printing, it could be in finishing, or it could be in wastewater treatment plants or end of pipeline solutions, what we call. Uh, but I did not focus more on end of pipeline solutions, only just left at the processing technologies. This is how it will be. Today I wanted to talk about on these aspects, looking at the sustainable development and challenges. For understanding the challenges, we need to understand what is the current situation. And if you all know our old world, what we are actually living in on the planet where we are living in right now, it was very green earlier, and only because of the whole pollution or whatever the changes have changed in the last 156 years. The last the when the human being has actually created chemical or the technology started, the industrial revolution has started. At that time, slowly the things started changing. So if you look at the old system, there were producers basically coming from the sunlight, and there are building blocks which are converting that sunlight and using that and creating the required food and energy stuffs. There are consumers. Even here we will have the same. We are the consumers, the people who are eating meat or even vegetarian systems. Those are the people who are eating, consuming, and then releasing something which is non productive outputs. Those non productive outputs are taken by the decomposers, which are basically the bacteria, fungi, and all, and breaking down those into the energy, heat, waste, and some inputs back. So this was the old system of nature. Now, what do we have now in our with relation to our textile industry? Is we have raw materials, which are basically most of it is synthetic. Mainly, most of it is coming from fossil fuels, petroleum or natural gases. Then we have consumers, which we are consuming maybe first use, virgin use, reuse, remanufacture, upcycle, recycle. Whatever we do, we also consume all of it, and then we ultimately go into the landfill, dumping yard, or maybe incineration. Whatever we do, we are polluting air or soil or water or land. Soil is the land. Then we have processes where we're expecting naturally that these dumped materials should give back our old raw material systems as in the old natural systems, which is not actually possible. So we have issues with our waste management. Currently, we are looking at various waste management technologies to generate inputs from the waste. But that's what we are right now in, but we are not able to resolve or solve all these systems as per the old natural system. So in order to biomimic our system currently, what we need to do, we have to produce. While producing, we need to use very little amount of fossil fuels. We need to use what is something called as renewable energy. Now remember one thing, in order to create renewable energy, we may need some materials. It could be like a solar cell. Now, solar cell also has a life. And there is also, we need to think of end of life solutions. What happens to that solar cell? What happens to a dye-doped material which is in the solar cell? What happens to that silicones which are involved inside the solar cell? All those things also need to be thinking, and you just cannot create something without thinking what will happen after this end of life. So that's something which we have to create while producing, using renewable energy, and in the nature of biomimicking. When you consume, you need to use it. You can use it as much as possible till you can reuse it. And finally, when you want to discard it, you need to discard it sustainably or ethically or responsibly. What do you mean by that? Means you need to understand the post consumer waste management systems and create the methodology to separate, segregate, isolate, not to commingle any waste which cannot be processed later on. So that is what when I say, when you have to do a responsible methodologies to be managed at the post-consumer system. After that, decomposition is needed. So we are expecting that everything in that particular atmosphere will go back to nature. Means everything which is created will go back to CO2, H2O, and NOx, SOx, etc. And we are not generating excess greenhouse gases, which can destroy the natural system. So this is the basics which we are looking at. So when we are looking at holistic sustainable development, we are looking at technologies which are designed with nature, use less of resources and should produce minimum waste, or the waste which can be destroyed or digested completely. First is minimum waste. It is not about what is the waste. In the waste management, there are two different technologies or two different parallel systems which you need to look into. How much quantity of waste which you generated, and what is the quality of the waste which you generated. Can I reuse? Can I reduce? Can I recycle? Or can I decompose? If you are creating something which is very little waste, but you cannot decompose it further, then it is again an issue. So the 3 R's which we need to also look into, and then create lot of capacity building and awareness. Because without the capacity building and awareness, you will not be able to sustain the developments which we are having. Then we need to also think, this is again one thing which we are, it's a bandwagon effect, I would say, in India or anywhere else in the world. If something which good which we see, then the whole thing will be revolving around that only. We need to utilize the resources as per the carrying capacity. You cannot survive everything in one shot. You need to have a proper balance on the carrying capacity. So any technology which you develop, you need to understand the carrying capacity of that particular technology. So supporting capacity and assimilative capacity needs to be also taken care of. Otherwise, a good technology can also become bad. So how do you measure? What is the systems where we measure? So we talk about a lot right now on LCAs. Now the LCAs, there is a huge amount of discussion happening around the LCA business right now. So the boundaries of LCA, the calculations what we are making in needs to also understood very clearly. So when you talk about zero waste and you talk about no pollution, these are the two buzzwords which you hear, because the biggest uh, change makers are the brands and retailers in case of textile world. The brands and retailers are creating their own targets for the next future 30 years, 20 years, long term targets. And most of the brands and retailers have taken this target of zero waste. Now you need to understand what is meant by zero waste. Is the zero means absolute zero? What do they mean by that? That is where you need to understand. Zero waste means no material is wasted, which means what is usable should be used completely. Today, if you are looking at making of a garment or you go to a tailor, you give 3 meters of fabric, you will be made probably a shirt and a pant, and then there will be some material which will be wasted. And that is where we are looking at that type of material waste should be minimized, or no material waste, no hard waste, no packaging waste. Today, if you look at most of the brands, they are now looking at packaging waste. That is also a part of your entire sustainability aspects. Then we talk about microfibers, microplastic and microfibers. We will also talk little bit in 1 or 2 slides, but that is going to be it's a new process. Actually, the first time when I heard in a conference about microfibers was 4 years before in Textile Exchange Conference. That was the first time when someone talked about microfibers, and then they were also, Hansen Institute was creating and proposed how to test microfibers, and where is it coming it from, what is the origin of coming it, and where is the processes of microfibers generation, etc. So today it has become a big process to evaluate and also to think whether your fabric is generating microfibers or not as a process. So waste means microfiber waste or microplastics as well. And then finally, chemical wastage. Hazardous chemicals and chemical wastage is also supposed to be minimized, reduced. When I say zero, I really don't mean absolute zero, but you are expected to minimize and finally find a way in which the waste can be managed properly. So when we are talking about under no pollution buzzword, we are talking about water pollution, air pollution, soil pollution. The governments, the current regulatory authorities, whatever they have created, is not just enough for us to maintain this planet properly. Based on this, the water pollution, underwater pollution, there is a new terminology which you will hear these days if you are in the field of or supply chain of textile processing, textile garment making, or in retailers, wherever it is, a buzzword called ZDHC, zero discharge of hazardous chemicals. This is a group, I would not say group, it's an NGO, which is a multi-stakeholder organization, which is creating the standards for water, air, and soil. Currently, the wastewater guidelines version 1.1 been released. Version 2.0 is getting released soon, probably before September. That will release the wastewater requirement to be discharged from any industrial origin for making sure that the water quality is maintained properly. Now, in the case of air pollution, ZDHC has created a white paper currently, but this white paper will come into existence from 2023. What does it mean to you? It means that every single producing factory of textile, apparel, footwear supply chain should meet the air pollution norms which are created in the ZDHC air pollution white paper from 2023. What is going to be changing? Today we have norms for SOx, NOx, particulate matter PM 2.5, PM 210, etc. at the chimneys or a boiler or a stack. Stack emissions are recorded and tracked. But what happens to the fugitive emissions? What do you mean by fugitive emissions? Is that the emissions which are generated and not passing through a particular area or a point source, but it is being generated in general while producing into the atmosphere. So, for example, I am just keeping acetone drum in my warehouse and the lid is open. It's a fugitive emission. If I am using formaldehyde for my fixing on the stentor, it is a fugitive emission. It will emit formaldehyde fumes in from the chimney and it will go in from the stentor and it will go out. So these are all fugitive emissions. So air pollution, what is going to come soon into the standard is that we need to not just test and control, but we also need to manage the air pollutions which are coming from fugitive sources for the solvents and VOCs. Then comes to soil pollution. There is a new standard which is going to come out soon from ZDHC, soon means by September, the sludge guideline. Because we want our wastewater to be pure or quality should be good, we need to ensure that our sludge, which is going to be the waste material, dumped out of all the bad things which are not supposed to be in the wastewater, will go into the sludge. So we are not expecting the sludge will be clean. We expect that the sludge will be full of organic chemicals and heavy metals. When it comes to heavy metals, we should understand that the total heavy metal and the leachable heavy metal, there are two different things. So we are expecting to have no leachates, or the leachate should be in the minimum concentration below the requirements of the sludge guideline, so that you will then know what to do with that sludge. If you have high amount of heavy metals and also high leachable heavy metals, you are not expected to send it to a land application. You cannot dump it on any area. You cannot just put it into the landfill. Only you can send it to an incinerator above 1000 degrees centigrade. If that ash can be commingled with your construction material, you can follow. Otherwise, that ash should go into secured landfill. So the guideline from the ZDHC will tell you what to do in case of your sludge quality. Based on the sludge quality, it will tell you the disposal pathway. So that is how we measure sustainable progress. If you are improved in your sustainability barometer, we check these are the parameters. Did you reduce your material loss? Did you reduce your hard waste? Did you reduce your packaging waste? What about microfibers? What about the chemicals? What about hazardous waste? What about your water quality? What about your air quality and the soil quality? All these things would be measured and tracked so that you can then talk about improvement in your sustainability goals for textile processing. Then we talk about how do we again measure for energy. So there are two things. This is all about waste and waste management, reduction of waste and quality of the waste. Then there is the improvement in terms of emissions for the energy from the greenhouse gas aspect. So when it comes to energy, based on your scope, there are three scopes: scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. When it comes to energy, and the definition, I don't want to go in deep right now, but most of the people will not measure, track, or monitor scope 3. So we need to do all three to ensure what is my current carbon emissions, and then take a target of reduction of carbon emissions and work on scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Remember, optimization of scope 3, which is basically your supply chains partners. It's not you alone, but your supply chains consumption is what comes under scope 3, and reducing or optimizing it is not an easy task. So you need to work on. That is why there is something called as science-based targets, which have been generated and created by the groups, like by the UN, and we all need to then follow the science-based targets to reduce the energy and also the water consumption. But when it comes to LCS, I said one thing. We need to look at the boundaries. What are the planetary boundaries when it comes to sustainability aspects currently? There are 9 planetary boundaries. See, in olden days, if you are reducing water or if you are reducing energy by steam or by temperature, or you reduce your time or productivity, optimization of a production process, you say it is sustainable process. But we need to now understand, to state that it is more sustainable, we need to evaluate the impacts of 9 different planetary boundaries which are created. It's not old, it's not new, it's old actually. It's only now we are slowly getting to understand, and not yet completely understood, by the way. So what is it? First, ozone depletion. Stratospheric ozone depletion. That means we are expected to reduce our greenhouse gases, which can create ozone depletion. We are expected to change our AC compression gases. Freon is no longer safe. So we need to ban some of the compressor gases, and some of the countries have already banned, some of them have not yet. but we need to ensure, otherwise ozone depletion is a fact. It will happen and we need to reduce that. Loss of biosphere integrity. This is something like when you create some new process, are we reducing or are we harming any living organism or any algae, fauna, flora? Are we extincting them? Because of, if currently you see huge amount of pollution which comes, and because of the pollution, lot of biosphere integrity is lost. Because those days when mangroves were actually there, now because of the oil spill, the fish and the algae and the fungi, everything will be gone. So when you start having a boat ride on a river without dropping a droplet of an oil, then it's a different story. But when you have a boat ride, usually there is oil which is spilled, there's huge amount of pollution which we create, lot of plastics which we dump in, and that can create biosphere integrity loss. Chemical pollution. There they have just not just talked about chemical pollution, but also release of novel entities. What do you mean by novel entities? Is some things which we don't know. For example, a chemical which was very good few years before is no longer good. One example is Teflon. Teflon, when it was created, was a fantastic material. Today, the same company is actually paying lot of claims for those people who lost their lives and who are leading a life which is not normal. So there were, that time why this happened is because we did not study completely the impacts or toxicological impact of those entities when we created. The tox studies were not done properly. Properly, when I say, if you look at any safety data sheet, we talk about lethal dosage. What do you mean by lethal dosage? The dose at which 50% of the species will die. We did not do any study a dose at which the people will survive but will not survive with normal life. We have never studied any impact on humans or rats or guinea pigs or monkeys or horses about the cancer for intestine or any cancerous things. We did not study that. We only studied what happens, what is the dosage at which the 50% of people will die. So the impact of the lethal dosage is studied, but we did not study the complete analysis of the novel entities. That is what we are right now doing. We are correcting what was not done earlier. That is why the REACH registrations are coming in the Europe, and not just in Europe, every country. In fact, even in India, we are going to have our own Indian chemical regulations. So that is going to be happening. So understanding everything about the chemicals and their pollutions and the disintegrated disintegrated chemical identities. So when you create something new, a dye stuff, as a researcher you will create a dye stuff, or as a researcher you will do some process. What you need to look at is what are the byproducts which are generated in the process, what are the cleaved molecules which are going to be generated post production, and what happens to this molecule during its disintegration. All the disintegration studies need to be also evaluated and see if there is any disintegrated product is going to impact the life of people in the water, that is the flora, fauna, the algae, fungi, and the fish, that is aquatic toxicity, and to human health or to air emissions. So that's something which we need to look into. Then climate change. When we talk about climate change, it is not a simple term. It has large amount of impacts across all the areas which you have the chemicals and the processes which we are creating, and also the cultural and behavioral aspects which we are doing in everyday life. Ocean acidification. We have, what happens to our waste water which is being released. ultimately it will go to ocean. Final destination is ocean. Many people, we have sea discharge permits, so we discharge our water into the sea directly. Also, lot of air emissions happen, and all these air emissions go up and then come back. When it comes back, it will also impact the ocean. So the ocean's acidification or the acid rains or any other pollution from the pollution indirectly impact ocean's acidification. What does it mean by that? If the ocean is getting acidified, there are only few people who can survive. The people who can adapt to the changes can survive. Very few. The rest will either they will migrate or they die. So there will be change of biosphere integrity again. Freshwater consumption and global hydrological cycle. That means freshwater consumption is need to be reduced, especially when it comes to the textile supply chain, because we are huge amount of fresh water user. We use large amount of water. Water is our raw material, important raw material. And when it comes to water, we are using huge amount of fresh water. And when you continue to consume the fresh water like this and start polluting our fresh water and releasing it as what we are currently doing, we will no longer have fresh water. Already we have depleted water in the groundwater. We are already depleting, and we are not managing sustainable rainwater harvesting or anything like that. So we are using fresh water and we are not replenishing it. Therefore, we at some point of time we will face water scarcity. It's going to be real. Wherever we have textile production, those are the places where we have large amount of water. You can imagine all the places where water was really a good source, except for Arvind's Santage plant, which was in the middle of no water zone in Ahmedabad. Except for that plant, when it started, and because it was not having water, they created zero liquid discharge 20 years before when it started. But that was the only example which I see. All others are near to a lake or a river or a pond or a canal or whatever. Then comes to land system change. Now you see, suddenly we start talking about natural dyes. Suddenly we start talking about natural resources from anything from the natural source. So when we start making corn use into textiles, corn is supposed to be used for food. Wheat is supposed to be used for food. Rice is supposed to be used for food. But suddenly we identify some new routes for industrial applications of these food crops, agricultural crops. We start changing our landscape of agrarian based systems. Suddenly it was used for agriculture till now, but now on it will be the land is used for industrial use. So the land system changes, but our population is increasing. We can't feed with the existing land. Our land is constant. We are not changing the land system. If you don't change the land system and convert the non-agrarian to agrarian, we will not have enough food to feed to the future generation. And that's where we need to understand one thing very clearly, that do not change the agricultural land and do not pollute the agricultural land what we have. Then comes nitrogen and phosphorus flows to the biosphere and ocean. Now, why does nitrogen and phosphorus is important for one thing for us? Remember, nitrogen and phosphorus is an important aspect for our soil and agriculture. But that does not mean that we increase the nitrogen content or phosphorus content into water, aquatic, or to the land systems. You're not expected to do that, because if you do that, we are going to have eutrophications and unfit to use water systems. Slowly, there will not be any life growth in that water systems. So when we create some technologies which are changing one or addressing one aspect, we cannot think of polluting something else. For example, these days we see lot of cationizations. You see, when I want to reduce salt, you have large amount of technologies coming out on cationization, fixation. We have large amount of cationic fixes. And what are they? They are all based on quaternary ammonium salts, nothing but nitrogen. So when you are using to reduce salt, when you are using the nitrogen and you are not taking care of that nitrogen, when it is getting discharged, then you are not doing something which is ethical or responsible behavior. So when I am introducing cationic dyes or cationic chemicals into the system of the supply chain of textiles, and I am not taking care of that nitrogen in the effluent treatment plant, then it is irresponsible behavior. So we cannot increase or change the balance of nitrogen and phosphorus. Then we talk about atmosphere aerosol loading. What is atmospheric aerosol loading? We create large amount of aerosols. For example, currently in the COVID situation, what are we doing? We are creating large amount of aerosols and spraying large amount of hypochlorites or whatever antimicrobials to most of our buildings. When I say building sanitization, what am I doing? I am creating aerosol and spraying, right? When I am doing fertilizers or pesticides, I am creating aerosols and I am spraying. When I am doing spray dyeing by nozzles, these are all new technologies which we will talk about, and that's where I am going to also to emphasize on this. When you are doing anything to do with spraying or atomizing in the garment dyeing these days, we talk about nanobubble, right? What is nanobubble? Is nothing but creating an aerosol. Beyond aerosol, what is there? Nebulization. I do create mist, not spray. Spray is drop. I don't create spray, but I create mist, is even further. Air in the water. So we are talking about colloidal solutions, basically. The colloids which we are creating. So the air in water, water in a gas systems which we create to do some technologies, dyeing technologies, and that is where we are increasing the aerosol loading into atmosphere, which will increase the percentage of chemicals which are going to be persistent. If you see the mist and the fog is not an easy thing to reduce. It will take large amount of time to settle down, right? The same thing, it will take large amount of time to actually remove the chemical which is in the aerosol system, which is in the air. So when we are looking at any system which is sustainable, we should think about these 9 questions. Am I doing anything more for this? What was earlier and now? If you say all the 9 you are not increasing, then you are fit to tell that your system or your innovation or your product or your process is more sustainable than the old. It's not just, oh, last time when I was using with this technology 30 liters you are using, now it is only 50 liters, so it is sustainable. No, not just one aspect. You need to look at all the 9 aspects. I hope this is clear. Now looking at these 9 and in your mind, think about all technologies what we are going to talk about. And all this other than this 9, we also need to think about sustainability aspect from the material. So MSI is Material Sustainability Index. Initially, it was introduced by Nike, and Nike created an index to actually understand the material sustainability of every fiber. Whether it be cotton, viscose rayon, or lyocell, tencel, cellulosic, the triacetate, hemp, all these fibers, natural or wool, wool or synthetics like polyamide, polyester, etc., they all have certain points to look into on the sustainability index. Based on the sustainability index values, you can then decide which are the fibers which you want to use in your design. Now, last 5 years, I would say most of the brands have started incorporating MSI as their part of design tools. It's not just how it looks, how fashionable it looks, or what is the color it will look like, but also what is the material which is made of. So therefore, now these days you are seeing there is a huge trend of increasing viscose in the composition. So that is where you will see the MSI index of viscose is better than other fibers. Therefore, their people are having more use of viscose, etc. So you need to have a clear-cut understanding of MSI, and not just that, local material sourcing. Why? Because when I said scope 3, scope 2 emissions, which means you produce in India, send to Africa, or you produce in India and you send it to Europe, Italy. The transportation cost and transportation emissions are additionally added. So what we are looking at in the future is take sustainable environment is local production, local sourcing. Why? To reduce the transportation costs. Not just cost, sorry, I said transportation cost, but it is not cost but transportation emissions. Okay, now I want to talk about little bit about challenges from microfibers. See, when you have, it was a fact that when you are having recycled polyester, you are having huge amount of microfibers generated. What are microfibers? From any synthetic fibers, a small tiny bits are released. You will also see when you are producing oligomers, you will form large amount of white plastic materials. You will get during the stentor also. They will be collecting large amount of white materials after the processing of the polyesters or any polyamides, etc. So they are uh, considered as microfibers. If a pair of jeans can shed 56,000 microfibers per wash. This is what we are talking about, that lot of research was done that what is considered as a microfiber, how much it is released, etc. This 56,000 can become 57,000 or 55,000 or 45,000, doesn't matter. The number is not important. What is important is what is happening. Now, even in the tap water in US, of course, India is the next best, is having large amount of microfiber pollution. It means that we are drinking microfibers. And microfibers are released from standard home laundry when we are washing in our home laundry, and they are very high, individual microfibers. And the quantity is increasing from our recycled materials even further. Now, where are they manufactured? Where are they produced? It could come from fibers, it could come from yarns, it could come from fabrics, and it can come from the garment. And garment dyeing and garment washing are the processes where the largest microfibers are going to be coming, for your information. So we need to also understand that we need to work on materials which can reduce your microfibers. For the cheapness or for the cost, you don't work with a cheaper material which can increase the microfibers in the post life. That's going to be a difficulty which we need to. That is why we need awareness creation, capacity building. Now, what do we do, by the way? If that is a problem, how we can handle it? We need to look at low melting process. You need to understand that physical or chemical recycling of PET. PET, when I'm talking about PET bottles, when you are recycling PET bottle back to PET or back to textile yarn or polyester yarn, you will encounter melting process. In the case of physical, in the case of chemical, you will encounter heating process. In one case it is melting, in one case it is heating. In both the cases, polymer is getting degraded, and because of that you are getting degraded polymers which will not have the same strength, same fiber qualities, and they will have higher microfiber release capacities. Then when you have cutting length of resulting fibers, you should ensure that you are cutting a larger toe and not a smaller toe, so that you will have microfiber reduction. Yarns with high twist have low incidence than the low twist. Garment dyeing to be avoided. Today, the fashionable article is garment dyed article. Okay, the denims, the jeans, pants, what we use, or the chinos, what we wear, the t-shirts, what we wear, they are all garment dyed. And when you do a garment dyeing, of course, you are also washing garments. So garment dyeing and washing will have more impact on microfiber release than the yarn dyeing. So if you see a shirt with a yarn dyed shirt, or you have a garment dyed shirt, it has more microfibers in the case of garment dyeing rather than the yarn dyeing. It is because of the nature and of course the way in which the processing is done in the cheeses, etc. Plain weave fabrics have lower impact than the twill weaves. During the napping process, if the cylinders are not properly taken, then it will be also weakening the fibers. Huge amount of harsh processings, like for example costicization, 2 times you do or 3 times you do, or then you are also engaging in 4 to 5 times of heating and cooling processes, for example heat setting and stentering. All these processes, when you are doing, you are changing the delta of temperature. Whenever you change the delta of temperature, you are heating, and then you need to give time to crystallization and cooling. During that time, there will be polymers which can get degraded, and it will increase large amount of microfibers. Chemical recycling can create monomers and repolymerization like virgin polymers. Therefore, chemical recycling can reduce the microfiber content than the physical recycling or mechanical recycling. The next generation plastic is the new technology which people have just now started talking about, is PDK, which is nothing but polydiketoenamines. Polydiketoenamines can generate polydiketo keto products, and then they will take back amines and come back into diketoenamine fabrics. So therefore it is possible for you to go back and come back again and again and again. So this kind of polymer can be recycled multiple number of times. It is like our triacetate. It can be recycled and reused multiple number of times. It could be possible that your fiber length can change. It could be possible that in your case of rPET, the intrinsic viscosity will change. Therefore, you cannot make multiple number of times PET bottle to PET bottle. You have to ultimately go back to the textiles where your intrinsic viscosity requirement is lower than the PET bottle. So these are the aspects of sustainability, the challenges what we have, and we need to look at holistic systems of how we measure. If you want to say this is better than that, you need to measure that. And what are the measurables which you need to look into before you claim, is what we have seen till now. Now let me talk about the second aspect, which is sustainable fibers. If you have any questions, you please raise, and we will have some time to discuss about. So in the case of sustainable fibers, we have these days, instead of virgin, all recycled is what we call as more sustainable fibers. So the future of fashion is more circular. It is no doubt. We are talking about circular economy, circular fashion, and it's all about the waste. Of course, there are countries where people are taking the waste and using it for energy, by the way. But waste to energy is a known concept. Waste to textiles is something which is still not a known concept. It's not yet in a bulk, because I am into this segment right now, and I am globally not seeing anything more than a pilot scale. Not even pilot, I would say it is in R&D scale. So we need to look at this waste as a raw material. Of course, except for viscose manufacturing, textile, cotton, cellulosic waste is not going to become in a big way. Even the viscose manufacturing from Lenzing or Birla is not on a big scale. These days, people are just now starting to look into the scaling up. Sateri from the other big manufacturers also announced that they will create viscose from the waste. So post-consumer, pre-consumer waste is incredibly valuable, and all materials should be coming out from there. So we will then look into waste to waste to textiles. That textile means polymers for fibers. It could be synthetic polymer like polyamide, it could be polyester, it could be spandex. These are the fibers which you can create from the waste, or from the cotton, cellulosic, natural waste you can create, convert back into some of the cellulosics. So I am not talking about things which are already known, I am talking about things which are new or relatively new. You need to understand about renewable carbon. So when you talk about renewable carbon footprint, the invisible carbon footprint is these things which you need to understand. Paraxylene has a biggest carbon footprint in our whole supply chain. Why? Because paraxylene is responsible for our polyester. Propylene is responsible for polyamides and spandex. So we need to understand that these are our invisible carbon footprints. Then we need to look at how to generate carbon dioxide to the best use. So when I am talking about waste, when I burn the waste, either there are two things. You either crack or incinerate under high pressure and or pyrolysis under no air. You either crack or then you generate syngas. From the syngas, you then create naphtha. From the naphtha, you create polyolefins like polyethylene, or you can create paraxylene, and then you can create polyester. So naphtha is an important raw material for us, but it is currently coming from oil or coal gasification or oil. But what happens if I am gasifying my waste, which has some calorific value? What happens if I'm gasifying used tires? What happens if I'm gasifying or pyrolyzing the textile plastics or any hard plastics? Then I create syngas and then naphtha. From naphtha, I can create many other possibilities. So that's how you can create the usefulness of the carbon dioxide. That is one aspect of chemical recycling and regenerating the fibers not from the fossil fuels. So one of the example of the regenerated fibers is Spinnova. Spinnova is a company which is creating fibers from wood-based cellulose. What is new in it? Because we are preparing viscose from the wood-based cellulose anyway. What is new in Spinnova? There is no dissolution process. In the cotton, viscose manufacturing, rayon manufacturing, we all know there is a solvent or there is a dissolution process in high amount of alkali, or there will be a solvent NMMO. But in this particular case, no. This is coming directly from the waste straw to the fiber, and there is a wet spinning process which is involved. So this is one which is now in a pilot scale, not in the scale up version, which is creating waste to fiber. So when you are looking at raw material is converted to the pulping. When in the raw material there is no water used, no chemicals used, that's why there is no solvent. While pulping, there is huge amount of water used, but there is and chemicals which are used is to make the bleaching. So it will be bleaching, and then after that it is refining. After refining, microfilament fibrillated cellulose is formed, and then the suspension is created where there is only 5% of polymers are used, but less amount of water. After that, it is extruded and dope dyed, so that you can get a colored yarn. If you don't want to dope dye, that also is possible. You get normal staple wire yarn. So this is how the Spinova process is coming, which is little destructive. Why it is destructive is because there is no dissolution of pulp or any chemicals used to dissolve the pulp and regenerate it. In the other kind where you have Refibra, which is a known fabric which is coming from Lenzing, to the lyocell, which is normal lyocell. But what I wanted to talk about is from the cotton waste, or from the unused cotton fabrics which are remained in the store, which is going to be landfilled after some time. They will be converted into lyocell, from the cotton scrap leftovers to the lyocell fiber which is created. This is why it is again a good use or reuse or upcycle of the waste. Now when it comes to biopolymers, because I'm not going to talk about, if you want to just talk about fibers alone, it's a huge amount of topic to talk about, and a large amount of research is happening. There are cottons which are generated in the test tubes. There is cotton which is cultivated in farms which is coming from a test tube babies, and not from the cotton seed from coming out. So you can actually create cotton type what you want, etc. And you can create cotton cultivation with low water footprint. So these are all things which I have seen from the um, in UK or in Europe, there are many what do you call laboratories which are cultivating cotton. But when it comes to biopolymers, what we are looking at is crop-based feedstock, biomass or waste feedstock, and biotech-based. That means some biomaterials are prepared by using enzymes, bacteria, etc. So earlier in old economy, where we did not think about our resources which are finite, we used to create rubber, regenerate cellulose, cellulose acetates, all these. In the new economy, we are talking about PLA, PHA, PEF, starch blends, biopolyester, biopolyamide, biopolypropylenes, and that is where we will be now looking at few of them. PTT, which is nothing but polytrimethylene terephthalate, which is coming from DuPont. Now, in this particular case, PTT is formed instead of using glycol, ethylene glycol, I am using propylene glycol. So 1,3-propane-diol is what I am using instead of ethylene glycol, EG, in the case of polyester. So if I change EG to 1,3-propane-diol, I will get PTT. Now, 1,3-propane-diol is coming from plant-based corn or biomass starch, and that is where it is coming from the plant-based 1,3-propane-diol. So 37% of the polymer is coming from the bio origin. Therefore, it is considered as partially bio-based PTT. This is the Sarona fiber which is coming out in these days in the market. It's very good. It's a replacement of polyester. That's what they wanted to put in, but it's only 37% of material which is bio-based or plant-based, but does not mean that it is biodegradable. Anything which is biopolymer does not mean that it is biodegradable. It is only the origin or the source is not coming from the oil or fossil fuel, but it is coming from a plant-based or plant waste. Now, if it is coming from corn, then it is considered as first generation. If it is coming from the waste, it is second generation. If it is coming from the leaves or bark, it is second generation. It is coming from the bio waste, then it is third generation. So that is how we are creating. Now bio PET. Now Torre EcoDear is one of the examples where bio PET is created. Most of the polyester prepared from the raw material coming out of methylene glycol from Indian glycols is bio-based, partially bio-based. Why? Because Indian glycols, methylene glycol or MEG is coming from monoethylene glycol, is coming from molasses. So it's a bio-based. So because it is using the molasses-based ethylene glycol, the polyester is having 30% of the biomass footprint. The 70% is still coming from terephthalic acid, which is coming from the fossil fuel. But now we have a breakthrough in the technology. There is a process coming from Virent's Bioform PX, wherein they are creating paraxylene from the plant-based, and this paraxylene plant-based material will then convert to terephthalic acid. So terephthalic acid coming from the plant-based paraxylene, ethylene glycol coming from the plant-based material. Both the raw materials are coming from the plant-based, not fossil fuel-based. Then it will be fully bio-based polyester. Torre is expected to create this only 100% polyester, bio-based polyester for the Japanese athletes' uniform for the upcoming Olympics. I'm not sure whether it is going to happen or not, but if it is going to happen, you will see for the first time 100% bio-based polyester worn by the Japanese athletes. Bio-based PLA, again here in this case, the biomass is coming from the starch, lignocellulose, saccharose. That will be converted to glucose, that will be converted to biolactic acid, and then from there PLA. So this is Ingeo is the brand name we are having. Then there is Banana Tex, which is also durable banana fiber, which is waterproof fabric, which is made by these, which is again coming from a natural source. There is also banana fibers, which are very popular in most of the Africans, also in India, but it's not yet reached to a level where the brands popularize it. Okay, Taiwanese are big in it because they are making very good yarns out of it, and they are already popularized it. Microsilk Bolt Threads is an innovation company, and they are creating spider silk, synthetic spider silk, similar to the spider weaved material. They are creating synthetic spider silk. The advantage is it is more stronger than Kevlar. And this is the new technology which is now coming in. Stella McCartney and Patagonia are already selling this product. Now, when it comes to the plant-based terephthalic acid, I am just showing you 3 examples here. There can be a possibility of terpenes and thymines coming out from the plant or wood stock based, and that can be converted back to terephthalic acid by oxidation. The other one is take the biomass, convert it to isobutylene. Now, isobutylene can be coming as a biomass pyrolysis or syngas formation. And from this biomass, isobutylene, you create 2,4,4-trimethyl pentene, and then you cyclize, dehydrate cyclization, you will get paraxylene. So this process is a patented process, GEO patent. And this process can create paraxylene. From the paraxylene, if I am just oxidizing, I will get terephthalic acid. That's how you can create 100% polyester from the biomass. Otherwise, you think of chemical recycling, wherein Polygenta from Nashik, from India itself, is creating a very, very good innovative production process. They are making currently up to 200 tons per month. And what they are doing is waste They add ethylene glycol and do some process called glycolysis. So you add glycol to the waste PET and it will actually break the bond and create the glycols, which is nothing but it forms the BHET, which is nothing but terephthalic acid esterified with MEG. So this material can directly then form the fiber. So this is a process which you can actually generate the PET bottle waste or fabric PET, that is fabric polyester waste, back to yarn, polyester yarn. The company is Polygenta. Now, these are some of the examples. I can talk about polyamides, I can talk about polypropylenes, I can talk about lycra and spandex, but that is, there is not much time. So I want to now give you some amount of information about technologies or processes where we are thinking the technologies will in future will adopt, will come in. If I make a statement that in future we will not have dye bath, which means I'm not having a exhaust dyeing machine where I'm having a machine, I'm inserting the fabric and water, the dye stuffs, and the fabric is impregnated inside the dye bath and it is rolled over and over and over and over and over to get the coloration. Gone are those days. Future will not have dye baths. When I'm saying that, you will see that. This is a small machine which is dyeing digital thread. It's a thread dyeing system. It's like our printer. You insert a cone, which is white thread, polyester white thread, and I am doing digitally dyeing and color matching everything in place. And finally, you will get a cone which is colored cone. This is for used mainly for embroideries or even for the designers, where if you want only 5 kg of a fabric or 5 kg of your some material or only 1 kg of a material, no one will give you. Just make it for you. So this is the technology where they created it only for the designers, design schools, researchers. Also, for the in case if it is only shortage of 1 kg of yarn is shortage, you don't have to wait for the shipment to come. You just have to do it. So that is how this twine technology. This is a digital printer. You operate, you see what is the color what you want, and you just automatically load the thread and dye the thread and auto wind it and get it out. It's everything in small time, all in one. Then we talk about something new, supercritical Daiku systems. We all know this is a very, very old 80-year-old technology, Daiku. But what I am talking about is an Indian, Mumbai-based ex-IIT Bombay technological person who is Devon Supercritical's Mr. Dr. Baser is a person who created a new system. What is this new system? Where you first print your fabric, okay, with the digitally, or you just print it and then apply supercritical carbon dioxide, wherein the supercritical carbon dioxide is diffusing and distributing the color evenly and getting more darker shade than the shade required by applying other technologies. For example, you want a color which is 3% shade depth in exhaust, you can do it with 1% dye stuff with this particular process. That same amount of depth you will get it with lower dye stuff. And it is used in single color or in multiple colors also. They are doing it. What they are doing, mixing the dye material in suitable solvent. The usual suitable solvent is carbon dioxide, of course, or water. But in the case of dispersed dye, it is carbon dioxide. Pre-treating the surface, that is what I mean. The pre-treatment coating is done. Place the dye coated material, what is basically with the same dye stuffs, add supercritical dyeing into the vessel and depressurize. You just leave all the carbon dioxide, so therefore there is no water, there is no waste. whatever waste is there is little bit in the which will be captured in the filters of carbon dioxide dissolved material when it passes through the filters, because you may not have 100% pure dyestuffs. So therefore, if any impurity is present in that fiber or in the fabric or in the dyestuff, that will be removed after the dissolution process is over through screening. So this is an innovative process. The patent is almost, I think, this week they are expected to get the patent also. Good technology. Then look at catenization. You remember when I said catenization is a new technology when people talk about salt-free process. They don't want to add salt because salt is a problem. Why it is a problem? Salt is needed for our cotton dyeing in the dyeing process. Why? Because we all know to reduce your zeta potential and also to create exhaustion, to increase substantivity. Now, but when the salt water is discharged with high amount of salinity, it is going to create problem for the land use or land application, because that will reduce the possibility of agricultural growth. Therefore, we cannot use or discharge salt. So salt reduction is an important sustainable process in most of the innovations. So Dow has created EcoFast. Earlier it was EcoFast. Then it came as EcoFast Pure, which is nothing but catenization, pre-treatment of the fabric, and do the dyeing usually as normal, and don't use salt. There are many technologies, there are many chemicals based on this technology. There are at least, which I know, 5 or 6 people who are selling chemicals on catenization. One is Dow, the other is Nanodye. This is coming from the US based technology. The NC State University ex-professor of textile technology, Peter Hauser. Dr. Peter Hauser is the innovator for this nanodye technology. In this particular process, this is a real dye house I'm talking about. Dow is only doing little bit of pilots, but nanodye is actually functional in 3 dye houses in Bangladesh, where they are not using salt at all. So completely closed loop system. You do the impregnation in as a pad process, batch for 12 to 6 to 12 hours. After batching, you do the exhaust dyeing without salt, and you reduce your dye stuff also, because the depth will increase. What are the disadvantages? Disadvantages is earlier, usually when you use cationics system, you get fishy smell. You get the fish smell on your fabric also, and it is not possible to remove that easily. In this particular nanodye, they have done a little modification to their catenization product, and now there is no fish smell. So that is one. The second thing is, as I said, the impact to the aquatic environment, because this chemical will go into the aquatic environment and then it will generate large amount of ammonical nitrogen. It is not good. Therefore, this particular chemical should be treated in a special wastewater treatment plant system, which is getting additively, they are adding extra to the existing systems, or you need to build a separate system so that this chemical can be cut into the smaller molecules and release, and do not add any nitrogen or eutrophication system to the process. So here you can see how they are reducing the baths, number of baths, and you can reduce, save water, save time, save energy, everything. Then there is another Indian microbial dyes company, which is in Pune. They are right now, they were earlier in NCL Pune Incubation Center. Now they have their own system. Both of them are alumni of UDCT textile department. They both are PhDs from there, and they created microbial pigments based on the bacteria. They created pigments out of this bacteria, and then it is and they also say the first time biodegradable non-toxic pigments. And these are now, they were very successful in creating the application for the lipsticks and the foundation materials for L'Oreal, because you can imagine these are natural biodegradable, non-toxic means it can touch skin. So you will have large amount of application possibilities. They can also be dyed with using the textile dyes. In the application is now in right now they are making in kilos, but they need to make in tons. That's going to happen soon. Then there is another technology coming from Dystar was salt reduction in indigo. Indigo dyeing requires large amount of salt, huge amount of salt. It is so much, it generates large amount of salt, which is ultimately going into the landfill. Now, the salt is generated because of hydrosulfide use. When you use reduction clearing agent or hydrosulfide, you use large amount of salt, and therefore, if by this is a byproduct, they introduce an organic chemical which is based on acetone byproduct, acetone based byproduct, that is replacing hydrosulfide, and it is having similar reduction potential. So that chemical is called Seracon CRDA, that is replacing hydrosulfide, and therefore the salt generation is reduced drastically. So you can see the amount of salt and sulfide content which is coming out of the ETP is reduced. You see the TDS amount is reduced drastically. Then we have printing, digital transfer paper. So there is a technology where you first print the digital transfer paper, and then you heat it and transfer the print to the textile. It could be also for not just polyester, also for natural. There is also another technology called air ink technology. What is air ink technology? Is nothing but capturing the carbon from your exhaust. For example, most of our people, we use sugarcane juice on the roadside. When you take the sugarcane juice, there is a motor which is coming out, the diesel engine or motor which they create. The exhaust will have large amount of black soot coming out. So capture that black soot, nothing but the carbon dioxide, carbon basically, particulate matter carbon, and extract it, and it is pure carbon. So you just have to see what is it, and then just convert it into ink. So air ink technology is nothing but recycling the carbon particulate matter and reusing into the black ink. Digital printing. If you look at digital printing, there is a technology where they are doing a rheology modification and converting a reactive pigment, basically a pigment which can be reactive, and converting the rheology modification so that the ink droplet do not coalesce so fast. It's all about surface area and surface tension modification, and that can convert, that can actually last longer, and it can print any substrate, not just textile, cotton, or you don't need acid or reactive or basic or pigment for different systems. You need only one system which is printing. It's just print, cure, print, cure, print, cure system. Imago is nozzles. Here I am spraying. You see, here I am spraying. On the right hand side, you will see the sprayed nozzles are spraying the chemicals, not just the dye stuffs, also can be chemicals. So if you do chemical, it can be finishing or pre-treatment. If it is dye stuff, it is dyeing. So you spray and autoclave. Spray, autoclave is the process. Then you have bioglaze. What is it? It is eucalyptus trees based glitter. They are creating glitter which is biodegradable and non-toxic. Nord Shield is antimicrobial, converted from the plants. This is basically a plant-based system. Anti-mold, antibacterial, antiviral, insect repellents, everything coming from the plants, and naturally they are created a layer on the surface. So we have this kind of antimicrobial properties in catechu, you know, the katha, what we use in our pan. The katha is catechu, which we also use, and it has antimicrobial property. Large amount of research happened in UDCT as well. Then there is something called as oil water repellency fiber finish, non-fluorine based, silicone based oil water finish, which is durable, coming from Cornell University. Rota spray, this is spray technology, there where we are creating the drops, where the disc is moving. I put the drops, and these drops, based on the speed or rotating speed of the disc, it converts the droplets, and these droplets fall onto the substrate and convert, either do the dyeing or finishing. Then we do foam dyeing. That's what I was telling, that we don't need the dye bath. We use foam. How do you use foam? I use air or nitrogen into the liquid chemical, the dye stuffs, and then create foam out of it. I add little bit of foaming chemical as well and generate the foam, and I apply coating. So I don't need water. I coat and cure. So this is being used extensively in the indigo. Royo from Tejidos Royo from Spain and Arvind in India. These two are already producing large amount of articles coming from the indigo, and now from Spain they also are doing sulfur black. So black. These are the two technologies which are not using water. Water use in normal case 16 liters per kg for the denim. In the case of foam dyeing, they use only 2 liter per kg. That too not during the dyeing, but in the finishing process. Earth colors. We have earth colors which is coming from Archroma, where they are taking all the waste and converting into the dye stuffs, sulfur dyes basically. Then I wanted to quickly introduce you in 3 minutes the chemical circularity concept. That means earlier we are using chemical industry produces, it will give to the textile industry or mills. They use, they discharge, they dispose, and then they send all the pollution will be segregated to all the places. Now, non-linear single-use model means what? The chemical industry will give the chemical to the mill. Mill will then give back the chemical residues to the chemical industry, not just pollute everything. So that kind of thought process is needed for ensuring circular model. What is something called as cure model, which is going to be just now started? You need to think about this chemical user responsibility model. So at every stage we generate some waste and we see the waste can be reused or recycled, and do that and only pass on what is just cannot be changed. So the responsibility of passing on the chemical residues and chemical waste is on the user. Examples of this: if I am doing a weaving, you all know for the weaving we need size, and it can be a starch or PVA, whatever. Imagine the weaver is weaving right now by using the size, and then he is passing on the fabric with the size to the fabric mill. Now the fabric mill will do the desizing process and remove it and then pollute his wastewater. Imagine if I am asking the weaver to weave it with the size and remove the size in situ, recover the size and reuse it back, and fabric without the size is only sent to the fabric mill. Why should someone will waste we should remove the size at the end point? Why not in the weaver's place? By doing that, we are talking about homogeneous waste, which is of high pollution load. Basically, sizes have a high pollution load. It is homogeneous. He can recover, he can reuse, he can purify, and then it will be useful, and then it will not be passed on to the fabric mill, and the fabric mill's ETP load can convert easily. Another example is wool. Lanolin is one of the extract material which we are using from the wool scouring. Today it is just thrown out by many people, but if we are extracting that raw wool lanolin, and we can use that in many of the cosmetics and pharmaceutical products, because it is a starting raw material for that. So imagine if we are thinking that every single chemical is a raw material, you should be reusing it, you should be extracting it and find the ways and means of using that, then our system of sustainability will survive. In future, we cannot afford to pollute anything. If you don't know what is in the chemical, you cannot use it, because then you don't know how to treat it and you don't know how to reuse it or recycle it. So in the system of circularity, we need more transparency, we need more traceability, we need more understanding and ideas to think and decentralize the systems in such a way that you reuse everything in situ. I think now that is what I will stop. I've completed, and my time was given up to 12:55. I have completed that. Now I am waiting for any questions if you have.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for a very informative session. I am summarizing whatever the sir has discussed. Sir has discussed the measurement of how can you measure sustainable progress, that is zero waste and no pollution, and how can you develop sustainable process by considering MSI material sustainability index and local material sourcing, so that to reduce the transportation emission. Sir has also discussed microfibers, various factors that minimizes release of microfibers, and how carbon dioxide is useful for sustainable fibers. Sir has also discussed about Spinova technology, Refibra, biopolymers, and a lot of information sir has given to us. Sir, a question from Mr. Biswas Yadav, that is, how MSI is decided and what factors that are affecting it?
Very important and very good question, I would say. MSI earlier was decided, if you remember, I mentioned that LCA was considered with wrong boundaries, I would say. Not all boundary elements were taken into consideration. So in the current Higg index, that is where the MSI is now holding, or the authors of the MSI is Higg index, which is again an NGO, which is called as Sustainable Apparel Coalition, where they created one number. For example, for cotton, it should be 33 or 0.1, 33.1 or something. It cannot be, because cotton coming from Vidarbha is different from cotton coming from Marathwada, because the rain, water, the capture, the agriculture, land, everything is different. Therefore, you cannot have one simple number for MSI. So what authors created at that time was based on some LCA studies, and they created some numbers to this MSI. But that's the basis. I would not say that is the end of it. Right now, SAC is asking everyone to do little bit more research on all the 9 boundary points, and to recreate the bandwidth of the MSI for every fiber. Because polyester manufactured in Germany, polyester manufactured in Indonesia, polyester manufactured by Reliance in India will have different attributes. It will have different emissions, and it will have different numbers. Therefore, it cannot have one number for all the types of polyester manufactured. So based on this, we are going to have in future a band like 33 to 43, like this. So everything will have a band, and the basis of coming to that numbers would be LCAs based on the 9 parameters which we discussed about the boundaries.
Any other questions from participants? If you have any question, then you type in chat box. You can raise your hand so that we will unmute to you.
So single dyeing, right now it is polyester. I assume anything which can be dyed with dispersed dye, for example, triacetate fiber, polyester, or any other dispersed dye dyeable materials can be done right now. Though Twine is also looking at various other substrates possibilities, it is under making right now. I have seen they have come up with cotton, but it is not yet completely successful to say that it is yes possible.
Sir, another question from participant is, in single thread digital dyeing machine, can we dye all substrate, and what types of dye / ink is used? Also, fastness rating are achievable.
So in that Twine example which I showed, right now it is polyester or polyester type substrates where dispersed dye inks can be used. Right now the inks are dispersed dyes, and the fastness ratings are achievable is the best in class. No problem, colors can be achieved, fastness can be achieved, not an issue at all. It's all in one. Then the second question which he is talking about is supercritical dyeing commercially in India. Right now in India, there is no commercial establishment. There are only 4 establishments in the whole world, in Taiwan and in Thailand. So they are Daiku systems. But I am 100% sure with the government of India intervention and Devan Supercriticals people who are trying to create commercially in some textile parks. So not yet, but hopefully it will happen soon.
Sir, another question from Mr. Naresh Kumar. Can we use supercritical dyeing process commercially in India?
So you can use, the answer is yes, it is possible. The only thing earlier in the case of Thailand or Taiwan was these are high pressure, high temperature machines, high pressure machines. Though it is like a bomb, but if you go into scuba diving, behind my back, I am actually having even more high pressure vessel with me. So it is even more dangerous basically. So it's not about, if we are technologists, we should not be worried about the pressures. We don't care about them. But the only problem was the fabrication. Currently the fabrication of the dye vessels coming from the US or in the European vessels, we also can do, because remember the dye vessels, these right now it's a very old concept, supercritical extractions of all the what do you call clove or oils or curcumin coming from the turmeric is all coming from supercritical extractions 15 years before. So we know how to manufacture. We are only not yet advanced, or in our mind and our heart, if we did not think that it is possible, but it is possible, but it requires little bit of technology and investment in the initial stage. Right now with the Devan Supercriticals, the investment currently required with reference to Daiku system, old system, it is lower than that. So I feel that it will be possible to get commercial success soon.
Thank you, sir. Attendance is monitoring through the software. Please don't write any attendance link. There is no attendance link. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for very informative session. There is no questions from any other participants. Next session will start from 1:30 p.m. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Shiva. On behalf of our institute, once again, thank you, Shiva.
Thank you,
And
madam.
thank you. So we are leaving right now. 1:30, please log in back for
Thank
the
you.
participants. Please log in at 1:30. Next speaker will join at 1:30. Today we have quite a long session from 1:30 to 3:30 and from 3:30 to 5:30. But from tomorrow onwards, we are slightly better position. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.